Welcome to the 7 Laws of the Learner video series. We're currently in Law 4, the Law of Retention. And now, here to tell you more about the Law of Retention is our teacher, Dr. Bruce Wilkinson.
We're on the funnest law, the law of retention. That is, how do you take some information when you want to pass it on in such a way that it doesn't just go on the sheets of paper that they're writing on, but it goes right inside of their mind and it stays there. How do you lock it in? This is part 2. Part 2 always deals with the practice. That is, how do you do the big idea? How do you help a class or even another person master the minimum? How do you boil down the content so you say, this is the truth you need to know? And then how do you take that, formulate it so that it goes right inside a person's mind and they master it? Then how do you make sure the whole class masters it? So that you could say to yourself, I am really causing them to learn. Well, before we give those secrets out to you, I'd like to show you a little chart that we've put together to try and explain how it typically happens. And I call this the normal class. The normal class. And what I try to do on this chart is to just outline what I used to do when I was in school and to blend it a little bit with the teacher. The first step would be for the teacher to gather the material that they're going to teach, have it all in front of them, and outline the material. Obviously, that is before, write this in your notebook, before class. Then the teacher would come to class and they would cover the material. They would cover the material, and the word itself is so poignant, isn't it? That if this was the material here that I'm supposed to teach you, I will bring it to class and I will cover it for you. And that is during class. Now, I don't know what kind of student you were, but I can be a little honest of what kind I was. And the rest of these are what I would do with my buddies in graduate school. That is, we would never look at the notes until the night before. And we would get together at Bruce Eberlein's house, because he had the biggest den. Well, he had the only den. And we would decide that tonight we'd learn the material for the test the next day. And Will would have asked older classmen what kind of test this professor gives, because he would never tell us. Because he would think the best way to be a good teacher is to hide what you think is important. So we would get together and we would get a bunch of pizzas, as you've already sensed, and some Cokes and Pepsis, and we would go through all of our notes page by page into the next box, figuring out the question, will he ask this question? And we would say, yes, I think he will. No, no, for sure he won't. Why did we have to do this? We had to do this because whenever any of us in school ever raised our hand and said, will this be on the test? The teacher always was offended. What do you mean, will this be on the test? You should know it all. No, you should not know it all. It is one of the most carnal thoughts a teacher can have to say, I will hide from you what's important. And I'll make you waste your precious time memorizing things I know aren't important, but you may think I may think they're important. How carnal. How selfish. What should you do? Tell them, this is on a test. Guaranteed. This part here? No. This part here, essay. You ought to know this stuff. In fact, you ought to teach them it. If it's going to be on the test, then they ought to know it before they leave class. What are we paying you to do? So we would play games because the teacher thought the purpose of a test is to find out what you don't know. To design something to find out what you don't know rather than to find out, did you learn what I wanted you to learn? So we would prioritize it. Next thing we would do is after that is we would use the word mnemonize. Mnemonize means how to find a way so you can memorize it. Why did we do that? Because the teacher never did it. The teacher just dumped the material on us. And it was our problem to learn it. Because in his mind or her mind, she decided it's not my problem if you learn it or not, so why even bother with it? Here it is. So we would say, we go through all these lists and say, okay, who wants this list? I'll take this list. Who wants this? So we divide the list of all the information you need to know. After that, we would review it and review it and review it. Now, we would memorize it until we mastered it. Now, on your chart there, The next one is practice using it. In other words, getting the benefit of knowing it. We never did that in class. Why? Because the teacher thought the role was to dump information, not the use of the information. So we'd rarely practice using the stuff we learned, and we'd hardly ever independently become skilled at using the course because we never practiced it with the teacher who could help us get over the threshold of using it. And all we did was tell you, here are the facts. But we didn't know how to use the facts. So if you could pick the four of us out the next morning out of a crowd of guys and girls going to the exam. Because we had all this stuff. Don't bump me. Why? We knew if you even bumped us an inch, we'd lose half of it. We'd sit down, we wouldn't even breathe. And they'd hand out the papers, and they'd say, turn it over. And what would you do? You'd run to the longest list first, and you'd put down your way to remember it. Back to the list to remember it. They're all R's. This one over here, it spells Big Mac, and this one over here. And then all you'd have is a bunch of funny letters all over the place, or pictures. And you say to yourself, I've aced the test. And you never wrote anything down yet. Why? Because you knew you remembered the way to remember the material. And you aced the test, and you walk out, how'd you do? All right. Now, if you called these four guys back to that same test one day later, I could almost guarantee you from experience, we wouldn't have passed the test. Therefore, did the teacher teach? The teacher did not teach. Did we learn? Not only did the teachers play the dirty game, but we played the dirty game with them, and everybody lost. So what typically happens then is after class, the student does all those things. I believe there's a better way. That is, to gather the material, to outline the material, and then the teacher should prioritize the material and then mnemonize it, find a way for them to memorize it. That happens before class. So you come to class and you say, we're going to be talking about the book of Genesis. There are 47 things I want you to know about in Genesis. 22 of them are people. 13 of them are places. I'm going to have you memorize all of them in the next 18 minutes. At the end, we will take a quiz. If all of you do not get 100, we will do the routine. We will hold up the piece of paper that the quiz is on, and we will put our hand like this. And if you do not ace it, then I want you to pull your hand in this direction, and we'll throw it away. We'll throw it away because I don't want in my grade book less than an A for my performance. Because I'm on test. You're not on test. Boy, would the kids love that or what? I'd love that. Then you practice using it. You spend half your time learning it and the other half the time using it. That's during class. What should homework be then, friends? Homework should never again be memorizing facts. Every time my kids come home to do the teacher's job, I just about go through the roof. Do not waste the time of the students doing your job. The homework assignment should be the independent use of that material. Okay, we went over 3 principles from the book of Genesis. I want you to pick out for your homework assignment any one of those life-changing principles, and I want you to write me a way in which that principle will change your life if you did it. Use the material. Now that you've learned it, we've talked about how it works. Now tell me how it works in your life. For homework assignment should be the use of the material, and that's after class. Make sense? Good. Good. Joseph Bailey has a great comment about this. Never let school interfere with your child's education. Now remember, this law is only to be used sometimes. That is, when you're trying to put out a bunch of information into the mind of another person. There's a great quote by Lola May. It reads, there are 3 things to remember when teaching school. 1, know your stuff. 2, know whom you are stuffing, then stuff them elegantly. Now, how do you do that? It's a skill. And here are 5 steps. And then, if you would like, we'll share those 7 ways that God used. In the left-hand box, put down the teacher. Right-hand box, student. What do we typically do in the yellow arrow? Content dump. Please stop dumping the content. It doesn't work. 5 ways, 5 stages or steps you do to speed teach a person. Number 1 stage or step is always the material one. Material. That's where you as a teacher go out and do your research. You survey other people's ideas about it. And you basically prepare. You do your outline, etc. Your rough one. Right now I'm in the middle of working on a talk in which I'm trying to answer the question, what has to happen in the Middle East from now to the second coming of Christ? I have all this material, too much material. I have about 40 minutes to talk to people who go, half of them don't even go to church. Half of them have never heard of Nebuchadnezzar. How can I do that? 40 minutes, all these people. What should I do? I need to start sifting it. Not that stuff. Oh, that's a piece of gold. That part right there, they didn't know about that. They didn't know about the Battle of Armageddon. Oh, this one, they need to know about the Antichrist for sure. Got it? Take that stuff and put it on a diet. We give material so bloated. Number 2, minimum. Boil it down till you reduce it. You research it and then you reduce it. You survey it and then you start to select. Select the material you want. How do I do that? I think about my audience, how much time I got, and then take all these pieces of information I have and put an A next to the ones I say you have to know to say you know. A B you probably ought to know. A C, maybe. A D, An F, forget it. Even I'm not interested. Then how many things you have, that's what's left to begin forming with. When I made the walk through the Old and New Testaments, or the life of Christ, I remember doing that. I took this whole life of Christ and put in every single unit of thing he did, whether he went somewhere, he said something, he healed somebody. I think it was about 300 and some of them. Then I went down next to one of them and I said, I have an hour and a half to teach an audience the life of Christ, many of them who don't know much about the life of Christ. I went right down. What does a person have to know about the life of Christ to say, I got the life of Christ? A, B. That's how you do it. You select it. This is where you basically prioritize. Number 3. I couldn't find a word for number 3, so I made one up. I've always wanted to do this. And if it ever gets in Webster's, I'll know I've arrived. It is the word mind easy. Mind easy. That is, look up here for a moment. In the first box of material, you have this big blob of stuff. Now you start picking out things, and here is the stuff you want to transfer. Now, I can either give it to you like what everybody else does and just throw it at you and say good luck, or I can say, no, let me serve you now. Let me start to cause you to learn now. I'm getting ready to cause you to learn. Let me find a way to shape that material in how many different ways? 7. That's it. 7 different ways. So that it comes into your mind. It's easy for your mind to get it. It's mind easy. This is where you come through and you restructure it. This is where you simplify it. If it's hard to understand, you don't know the information well enough. Package it. Become a marketer. How does it look attractive? How does it come easy? Now, guess what? All that takes place before class begins. All that is before. Box number 4 is simply class. And at class, what do you want to do? You want to go over the material, obviously, but the goal in this law is that they memorize it. They memorize it. You do that by review. You cannot have a person remember it unless they review it. This is where you solidify. You solidify. You're pushing it in. This is where you practice over and over again until the people have it. You take a quiz, and if that 90% or more don't ace it, you haven't taught it. That's class. That's during class. Now, if you didn't meet with your class again for a couple of weeks and gave them a quiz on the material you had just taught them in class, would they be able to get an A on it? No. Why not? Because we're kind of like a sieve. it comes in and then immediately goes. So what do you have to do? You have to go from short-term memory to long-term memory. You got to keep pushing that information back further, back further, back further, until you can say to somebody 20 years later, what's 7 times 7? 49. Well, did you review it last year? No. Why not? I'll never forget that. Riding a bike. Eventually, it moved from here to here. How did that happen? You reviewed it. You must review. We have in our minds that I need to spend all of my time giving you new material or I'm wasting your time. If you want to see a shocker, you take at the life of Christ and study the material that he taught, and you'll see he reviewed over and over and over again. He said the same way in a parable. He said something in a direct conversation. He did a miracle that made a comment about it. He said the same idea over and over again. Why? There's a few things I want the world to get. These are them, and I'm going to keep saying them till you get them. So should you. Therefore, box number 5 is the box that we're using the word master, and that is after class, which means after the class that you've just taught them the material, classes that follow. You review it and review it and review it until you should be able to say to somebody, hey, how many books in the Old Testament? You dealt with that the first week, 16 weeks ago. Give me the outline of Judges. What do you say about the heathen question? Give me the 5 verses that prove to me that Jesus Christ is God, not just the Son of God. What do you say about the Mormons who say that? It's not the test. It's not the test. It's whether they got it or not. Therefore, help them master it. Got to come back and retrain them till they become skillful, till they have a high degree of proficiency. Proficiency. That takes place after class.
Once you have gathered your material and boiled it down to the minimum, your next responsibility is to make it mind easy. As we've mentioned before, there are 7 ways to make any content easy for a person's mind to remember. During this stage, you're going to be reformatting the material so that it flows easily into the person's mind with a minimum amount of effort and a maximum amount of retention. How can you get a lot of material quickly in a person's mind? That's the heart of speed teaching. I wish we had an hour for each one of these 7 maximizers, but unfortunately we don't. What we do have is we have enough time to give you just a brief overview of each one of these and encourage those of you who really want to become skilled to take a deeper look at the 7 Laws of the Learner textbook. Right now, though, turn in your notebook to the retention maximizer. The first one is represent the facts in a picture. Represent the facts in a picture. Well, go back to the beginning of this law. And we showed you that picture, remember? With the grandfather sitting down on the porch and he had something in his hand. What did he have in his hand? Right, he had an apple. And what was spelled on the back of that turtle as it was walking along? You remember? Yeah, you do. It was apple. Because something you see, you can remember. Maybe that's why God used so many dreams and visions in the book of Daniel. Weren't they all just pictures and images that God put in his mind and his dreams so that he would never forget? I mean, who among us can forget the head of gold and the shoulders and so forth of silver? Well, there's a lot more that we can be sharing with you about this idea of using pictures to make things mind easy. And at the end of the law, we're going to show you a lot more about the concept of pictures. Let's take a look at number 2. Express the facts with logic. Let me just give you a little bit of an overview of that. Over here on the flip chart, one of the ways we help people to remember how many books there are of the Old and New Testament is we take a look at something logical, simple as counting the letters. Here's the word Old Testament. Well, how many books are there in the Old Testament? Well, there are 1, 2, 3 letters in Old, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 letters in Testament. There are 39 books in the Old Testament. And if you take 3, 9 and multiply it, so it's 3 times 9, what do you get? You get 27. That's how many books there are in the New Testament. Logic is the same way you can remember the book of Romans. The book of Romans flows logically. The first 3 chapters are about sin, which presents the problem. The next 2 chapters, 4 and 5, is the answer to that sin. It's salvation and how it occurs in a man's life, in a woman's life. But after you've been saved, the next question is, how do you keep on growing? And that's the whole concept of chapters 6, 7, and 8. You grow in sanctification. But in the middle of all that, as the author's talking about that, he says, yeah, but what happened to the Jewish nation? What happened to them? And that's in chapters 9, 10, and 11, where it deals with the sovereignty of God's choices and how he's working with the Jews and the Gentiles. And then after that parenthesis is over, he goes right back to how you should live your life in service. So it's sin, the need, salvation, the answer. Once you got it, how to keep going it, a parenthesis about a particular group of people, and then to keep on growing in your service. It's logic. Number 3, transfer the facts by the alphabet. By the alphabet. That's the easiest to do. We call this alliteration. And you've probably done this since you were a little tiny child. Remember playing the piano? Remember, every good boy does fine, a way to remember the scale? Or the 7 laws of the learner. L, learner, E, expectation, A, application, retention, and so forth. We use the alphabet to remember. I remember a while ago, we were trying to help people remember the books of the New Testament in order, and we weren't having very much luck. So we found out where people couldn't remember things. They were going Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, and then they got kind of stuck in James or Hebrews or Revelation or Exodus, whatever. And we found out that they got as far as 1 and 2 Corinthians, then they forgot Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and they couldn't remember the order. But what does that spell? Well, it spells Gentiles eat pork chops. You got it? Gentiles eat pork chops. Gentiles eat pork chops, or Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians. Now, where did we get that crazy idea? Where did we get the idea of using the alphabet? Well, believe it or not, we got it from the book of Psalms. Here's Psalm 119. And the first 8 verses of Psalm 119, take a look at this. Verse 1 begins with letter A, verse 2A, verse 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A, 7A, 8A, and the next 8 begin with the letter B, and the next 8, C, and right on through it. Well, who inspired Psalm 119? Well, take a look at Lamentations. Chapter 1, verse 1 begins with the letter A, verse 2, B, verse C, 3, 4, D. Every verse begins with a different letter. That's how you remember it. Even the early church. Remember, you've seen the phrase or the word ichthus. Ichthus is an acrostic which stands for Jesus Christ, God's Son, Savior. Those are the first letters of the Greek words made into ichthus, so the alphabet. Number 4, associate facts with objects and actions. And we'll take you to the seminar right now and show you a little of this in action.
Let me see if I can't review for you some of the Old Testament walkthrough using objects and actions. How many of you were at the Old Testament? How many were at the New Testament? Too many of you were there. Let's do something that you didn't learn, just so it works well. You have a second hand on your clock, Roger? Give me 2 minutes. Say when to go. Tell me go. Okay, go. We're going to change this land around to the land of the New Testament, and I'm going to teach the geography to you. If this direction is north, that direction would be south. And this would be east. And that would be west. Say it again, ready? North, south, east, west. And this would be right here, the round lake called the Sea of Galilee. Sea of Galilee. Say it for me. Sea of Galilee. Take your finger and turn it upside down. Point your finger down and do a circle. Ready? Sea of Galilee. Flowing out of it's a long, windy river called the Jordan River. Wiggle it. Ready? Jordan River. And it flowed into what? The Dead Sea. Now kill it. Dead Sea. Dead Sea. Here we go. Ready? Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, Dead Sea. From here all the way over would be the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean. In the Mediterranean, there's great big waves. So this whole division, when I go like this, let's kind of move together. You watch, you'll get sick. Ready? Mediterranean. In unison, kind of. Ready? Mediterranean. Watch again. Ready? Mediterranean. Here we go. Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, Dead Sea, Mediterranean. Now, this sea is 7 miles wide and 14 miles long. 7 by 14. Finger up. Ready? 7 by 14. The Dead Sea is 10 miles wide and 50 miles long. Long sea. It's getting shorter because it's evaporating until Christ comes. 10 by 50. Ready? 10 by 50. 7 by 14. 10 by 50. And in between the bottom of the Sea of Galilee, all the way to the top of the Dead Sea, is the old speed limit, 65 miles. 65, well, it's kind of the new one, too. 65 miles between here and here. So how far is it in the middle?
See what I'm doing? Objects and actions. I'm helping the audience learn something through association.
Galilee, Jordan River, Dead Sea, Mediterranean, 7 by 14, 10 by 50, 65.
Well, that was fun, wasn't it? That was a part of the popular Walk Through the Old and New Testament seminars. If you've not had an opportunity yet to attend one of those, then look for them in your area. And if you'd like a free schedule of the seminars, just write us on the address on the bottom of the screen or call us on the number. But let's now get back to these 7 ways that you can take any amount of content, restructure it, and then just pour it right into the memory of the people that you're teaching. If you do that effectively, the people that you're teaching won't even have to concentrate. It'll just go right back into their back memory. Number 5, how do you do this? You impress the facts through drama. Through drama. You remember when God said that you're supposed to give an animal sacrifice for when you committed a sin? That you would take a sheep or a lamb and you'd bring it over to the priest. And what did you have to do? You had to become a part of the drama yourself. You had to put your hands on the head of that sheep. You had to express your sin. And then what would take place is the priest would slit the throat of that lamb, representing the fact that your sins required the death penalty. That instead of you dying for your sin, the lamb was dying for your sin. What an incredible drama. I imagine when you did that, you realized that sheep was dying simply for your sin, that you never forgot that. And it made you think the next time you considered having a sin, what you had to do to get it forgiven or covered. Think also about the Passover celebration, which was held over these many hundreds of years by the Jewish families as they'd meet together, and the father or the elder would sit at the end of the table and rehearse the whole Passover, the Seder, take the unleavened bread and break it and tell the story. It was a drama that was rehearsed year after year. Well, we also do this in the New Testament, didn't we? Remember how Jesus Christ wanted us to remember him through the communion, in which he said, do this in remembrance of me. That every time we celebrate communion, what are we doing? We're having a drama, a little one, only we're not acting it, we're in the drama. The whole congregation's in the drama. Do this in remembrance of me. Therefore, when you're trying to take something and really put it into the emotions and the mind of the person, take your content, wrap it around the drama, and put it on. And then when you want to review it, just say, remember about the drama? What did we do? All right, number 6, note the facts through music. Note the facts through music. Think back to when you were a child for a moment. How did you learn the alphabet? Did they use pictures on you? Did they do it with drawings? Did they do it with facts? Did they do it with logic? No, we probably all learned it the same way, with the alphabet song. Even I remember training our children to sing that little song that goes A, B, C, D, E. You remember that? Why? You can remember it all these years. Now, some of you may practice that regularly just to keep it sharp in your mind, but probably not. Well, you can take any set of content that you want and a well-known tune that everybody would know, row, row, row your boat, something like that, or a well-known hymn or a well-known popular tune. Take those words, rearrange them, and put them to that tune, and the people will learn it. That's what the whole book of Psalms was in the Old Testament. Words that the people sang. That's why scripture songs are so easy. That's why you hear yourself humming back and forth. All right. Number 7, the last way is to summarize the facts with graphs and charts. can take the material and summarize it with graphs and charts. That's what we've been doing with these graphs and charts all the entire 7 laws of the learner. Taking the ideas of Scripture and putting them in a model. Taking the idea of the method, putting it in a graph and chart. Why? Because that's how we learn. We see it. Think about the tabernacle and how it was laid out and how you had to come through the door and wash your hands and all the rest of it. What was that? Well, if you just look down on top of it, it was a graph and a chart of how to approach God. I remember when we moved to Atlanta the first time, we got lost almost every day. I mean, there was hardly a straight road in the city. Till finally a man, an older man, sat me down and said, listen, let me tell you how never to get lost again. Took out a piece of paper, and he said, Atlanta is a circle. That's 285 that goes around the city. Said, no matter where you are in the city, no matter what direction you go, you're going to have to run into 285. He said, draw a line like this, east to west. He said, that's Route 20. Then put an X through it. This is 75. This is 85. Here's downtown. There's the airport. He said, you can't get lost. And ever since then, I haven't got lost for long in the city of Atlanta. Well, that's how you do it. I wish we had a lot more time to spend on each one of these, but there's a whole lot more material in the textbook on how to think about it and illustrations of it. Let's spend, however, a few minutes just to show you how one of these, the use of the picture, really works.
Because of limited time, I'm just going to show you how to use one of those 7 methods right now, okay? We've just been playing around a little bit. But one of the things that Walk Through the Bible has been working on for a number of years is to try and help people learn the big idea of the Old Testament without trying. And what we have to show you this morning is the keyword learning system about the Old Testament. All right, what this is pictures about the Old Testament books that come through your eye gates into your back memory. Let me see if I can't show you the first one. The first one is obviously what book of the Bible? Genesis. Now, what do you see unusual about that word Genesis? The big N. What's the big idea of the book of Genesis? The beginning. So what these visuals try to do is through a picture, bring into your mind the book of the Bible and the big idea in one big thing. So you'll remember it from now on. What's the big concept of Genesis? Beginning. All right, now, what book is this? Numbers. And what are they doing? Right, Numbers wanders. Say it for me. Numbers wanderings. What's Genesis? What's Numbers? Now this one's a little bit more challenging. What is that? That's a moose. It's a moose. A moose. Some of you are still working on Genesis. What's that N for? I don't understand that. What's he holding in his hands? A plumb line, a plumb line. Genesis. What's Genesis? What's Numbers? What's a moose? Plumb line. Now this one's kind of easy to remember. What book is this? Ezekiel. And what's he doing with those bones? Dry bones. Dry bones. Ezekiel is what? Dry bones. What's Genesis? What's Ezekiel? What's Numbers? All right, now this one is an intermediate one. Some of you need to sit back and close your eyes and rest. Now, what is this thing right here? It's a mule. What kind of mule? It's a sand mule. That's right. And what's the name of this person whose foot's on the mule? He's a king. What does he have in his hand? King who? King Saul. So 1 Samuel is? King Saul. What's Numbers? What's Ezekiel? What's Genesis? Beginning. Here's a favorite one of mine. This is kind of rated PG. What is that lovely lady made out of? Hosea. That's right. And what color district does she live in? The red district. That's right. She's a harlot, as you remember. Hosea, harlot. Hosea, harlot. What's Hosea? What's Numbers? What's a moose? Let me give you one more just for fun. What does he have on his back? A backpack. What kind of backpack? Aha backpack. A back kick. And what's he standing on? Watchtower. How many of you are still working on Genesis? I see a lot of this in this. Now, you take those things, and in about 30 seconds apiece, you got it. What's Amos about? What's Numbers about? What's Ezekiel about? Look at that. You don't have to speak and teach 10 facts in an hour. You could teach 10 facts in about 3 minutes if you wanted to. Well, when we were doing these visuals, the fellow who was coloring them on his computer, his young son was next to him watching this, and he was learning it like this. And Gordon came to the office and said, we got to do something for kids. Can you imagine if kids learned this stuff early on? So we've developed, out of our learning system, color through the Old Testament. And what it is all those pictures with the stuff above that you can teach to your children. It works really great. I was up and fishing in Alaska one time, and we just finished this up, and my son had worked there this past summer, and so we brought this up to the people that he stayed with. They had a 9-year-old girl. So that supper at dinner, I said to the girl, it was really cute, I said, sweetheart, I brought you a gift. And I showed her the coloring book and showed her how it worked. And she said, can I borrow this? I said, no, this is for you. No, can I borrow this? I said, sure. So she borrowed it, and she left for the night. Next morning, we're having breakfast before we go out fishing at 7 in the morning, all bleary-eyed. And she comes down in a little nightgown, and she's kind of got something up her sleeve, and she comes over to where I'm sitting, and she says, ask me. I said, ask you what? Ask me any one of them. I said, you don't know all these. She says, yes, I do. Ask me. So I started asking her the books. What's 2 Kings? What's Ezekiel? What's Daniel? What's 2 Chronicles? She says, I know them all. Now, when's the New Testament coming? The problem is, friends, not all of us love to color. Some of us are into other things. And we have something for you as well. Here they are. There are all the cards. And on the back are the big ideas. They are a riot. Just carry them in your pocket. And as you're driving.
Remember, as we wrap up this law, that your goal as teacher is to teach all of the facts to all of the students as quickly and as thoroughly as possible. Don't ever allow yourself to just cover the material ever again. Remember, you're not teaching a subject, you're teaching the students the subject. If you want a real test of how effectively you are teaching, just give a pop quiz, unannounced, at the end of your next class, over the very material you just taught. You may be surprised that they learned a lot less than you thought you taught. You see, master teachers focus more on what their students have learned than what they have said. The more your focus is on your students, the greater the potential you will have of becoming a master teacher. Master teachers help students master content. In fact, just last week, I received a surprising letter about this very thing from the president of the seminary that I graduated from. In it, he tells a story I never heard about, the founder of the seminary, Dr. Lewis Sperry Chafer. The letter reads, it was in the fall of 1948, and I was studying the biblical doctrine of salvation through Christ's death and resurrection under Dr. Chafer, founder and first president of the seminary. I loved his crystal clear explanations and the illustrations of deep theological truths. When he came to a discussion of the finished work of Christ, Dr. Chafer was absolutely passionate. It was clear he wanted us to have an unshakable grasp on the doctrines of redemption, reconciliation, and propitiation. After weeks of compelling lectures, I faced the midterm test, along with the other students, he said. I painstakingly filled my exam book from front to back with my best thinking on the subject of salvation. A few days later, Dr. Chafer walked into the class with a stack of exam books in his hands. There was a sense of excitement in the air as we waited to receive our test results. But I sensed something was troubling Dr. Chafer. As he placed the graded papers in front of him on the desk, he solemnly told the class how deeply disappointed he was that we had not adequately understood the meaning of these very important theological concepts. In fact, he said, his heart was broken. With that, Dr. Chafer ceremoniously dumped the exams into the wastebasket and proceeded to expound once again on the finished work of Christ. Needless to say, we all paid very careful attention. In a few days, Dr. Chafer gave us another test. Listen to this, listen to this. And everyone passed with high marks. You see, friends, teaching to the point that your students master the minimum has always been a central priority for great teachers. They realize they haven't taught unless their students have learned. Now that you have learned the secrets behind developing material that's mind easy, may you always teach until all your students have learned, until they have mastered the minimum. And then you know what will take place? Behind your back, they'll be calling you a master teacher.